Is everybody ready to go?
I don't think there's any list of things happening.
Can I have your attention, please? Attention, please. Is everybody ready to start the meeting, or you need a few more minutes there? Rob and Mowini would like one more minute. So please continue to talk amongst yourselves. You're good? Okay. Welcome, everybody. We have confirmation of quorum. We haven't done this in over a month, so it should be entertaining. So we're going to call the meeting to order. We're going to acknowledge that we're located on the traditional territory of the Lakota people. Adoption of agenda.
So moved.
Director Chapman and then Director Wally. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Petition delegations, none. Adoption of minutes. Director Wally, Director Chapman. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Business arising from minutes? None. Public considerations? None. Notice of motions? None. Chair's reports? None. Okay, here we go. Committee Chair's report. That the minutes of the special meeting from the Electoral Area Service Committee that was held on December 13th be received.
So moved.
Director Chapman?
Second.
Director Rice. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that the minutes of the special budget meeting of the Electoral Area Service Committee held on December 14th, 2023 be received. Director
Second.
Wally, Director
Second.
Von Esch. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that the draft minutes of the inaugural meeting that was from the Electoral Services. Let's try that, yeah, in its entirety. Electoral Area Service Committee held on January 10th, 2024 be received.
Move receipt.
Director Mowini.
Second.
Director Von Esch. Discussion? All in favor? See anybody opposed? Seeing none, carried. Strathcona Gardens Commission, that the draft minutes of the special meeting of the Strathcona Gardens Commission held on December 13th, 2023 be received.
So moved.
Receipt.
Well, second.
Director Rice, Director Senate. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. First Nations Relations Committee, that the draft minutes of the inaugural meeting of the First Nations Relations Committee held on January 10th, 2024 be received.
Move receipt.
Director Davis, then Director Mowini. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Staff reports. Agricultural Land Reserve application, 1845 Stowe Creek Road, Sayward, BC, Electoral Area A. Move receipt, Director Wally.
Second.
Director Von Ness, second.
Everyone, I can't hear anybody. I have no sound here at all.
I think you have to mute
else?
there, Matthew. Can you mute there? Thanks.
He can't hear you.
He said he can't hear anybody.
We could hear him.
Yeah, but they lost audio.
Yeah.
We've asked them to call in, Dave, so I've been giving them that information in the chat.
Okay.
What can we tell?
Yeah. Well, we've sent them messages to call in because they're having challenges with the audio.
If you could just write a quick sign, Robin, and hold it up in front of the camera.
We've connected with them. I think, Mr. Chair, Annika will speak to this for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, through the board. or through the chair to the board, mind you. This application before us is an ALC referral from the Agricultural Land Commission. It is for an agricultural land reserve inclusion and a subsequent exclusion of lands in electoral area A. The area is currently not regulated by either a OCP or a zoning bylaw. However, there is a subdivision servicing bylaw that would come into play should this application be supported by the board and further approved by the Agricultural Land Commission, at which time we would receive a referral from the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure and provide comment on the subsequent subdivision. What the applicants are hoping to do is take their 32-hectare parcel of land, which is approximately 80 acres in size, and include 11 hectares of land, which is about 27.9 acres, which is currently not designated by the ALR. So the overall parcel is split designated. There's portions of the parcel that are not designated by the ALC at this time. So I'd like to include those 11.3 hectares and then exclude a subsequent 4 hectares to provide additional lands for family members in the future. The balance of the application is really specific to the agricultural potential and net productivity of those lands. Staff does assume that as more lands are to be included and less excluded, and those being excluded not being farmed at this time, that the overall net agricultural productivity of the entire farm itself would be improved should this application be supported by the regional district and then, of course, again approved by the ALC. The recommendation, therefore, is that the SRD board support this application being forwarded to the ALC and allow the ALC to determine whether or not they will support this. Thank you.
Director Wally.
Yeah, I'm familiar with this piece of property and I support this application. It's more than equitable in the exchange they proposed.
Thank you. What the question I have is, in the executive summary, it states in brackets, good ongoing management practices required. What does that mean?
Given the limited capabilities of the soil capabilities of the lands, extra effort needs to be put into those portions of the land to improve or retain agricultural potential.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're still on receipt. All in favor? Oh, Director Davis.
I guess this is a purview of the ALC, but my question is, like the information we've been given, there's no soil mapping here. It doesn't show the relative productivity of this land and whether it should be removed. So I sort of have trouble voting in favor of this without more information.
Thank you. Annika?
Thank you, through the chair. The information that we have been provided is that the soils are class 2X, like the chair was just saying, requiring some ongoing management practices to retain the productivity of those lands. Again, those lands that are being excluded are significantly less in area than those that are proposed to then be included. We're potentially going to remove 4 hectares of land and in exchange include 11 hectares. And those 11 hectares of land that are to be included are actually being farmed at this time as opposed to the 4 hectares to be excluded.
Okay, thank you. On receipt, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. B, that the agricultural land application, ALR, 1A24 Postman be authorized to proceed to the Agricultural Land Commission for exclusion and subsequent exclusion of lands known as North 1-2 of Southwest 1-4, Section 34, Township 6, Sabre District, as indicated in the proposed land swap plan attached to the staff report dated January 19th, 2024.
So moved.
Director Wally,
Second.
Director Rice, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Thank you, Annika. Request for funding, Black Creek, Oyster Bay Water System. The report from the CAO be received.
Move receipt.
Director Rice, Director Wally, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And B, that the financial contribution of $84,887 be approved for electoral area D, Community Works Fund for the Black Creek, Oyster Bay Water, system, well number 6 project, subject to finalization in the agreement regarding cost sharing with the Comox Valley Regional District.
Move recommendation. Second.
Director Rice, Director Chapman, discussion. Director Davis.
Yeah, Is this the same area of contention that we were discussing a couple of years ago? Because I remember there was some pretty acrimonious debate regarding this area. It's hard to tell because there's no maps in this. I guess I have some questions about the purpose of this increased water withdrawal and the carrying capacity, and will it have impacts on the Oyster River itself in terms of the amount of water that flows down the river?
Thank
If it
you.
isn't what I'm thinking about, it's close to the river?
We'll go to the CAO.
I'll just give a brief bit of history on what Director Davis is referring to. So a few years ago, the CVRD applied for a grant for a well in the Oyster River Park. They didn't get our permission for that. And so long story short, we settled that. This well is on Shelter Point Farms, so it's not in our park. They just moved it off our property. So we don't have many details on it, but it's not in the park. It's not the same well that you were thinking of.
Is it also close to the Oyster River?
I think it's a lot farther away than the well that was drilled in the park. I mean, I want to say, I'm going to guess a kilometer, several hundred meters for certain.
Okay, thanks for that.
Director Rice, you're good? Okay. So we read all that and go there. Discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. I'll get you to turn off your microphone, please, Director Davis.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Community Works funding request. Mason Hall heat pump. Report from the CAO be received.
Move receipt.
Second.
Okay, we had Director Chapman and then Director Mawhinney. Discussion? Director Vonish, on receipt.
Thank you, Chair. I do just want to say that I do have a subsequent motion after B, which I can talk about then.
Thank you. All in favor of receipt? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. And B, that the request from the Southern Cortez Community Association for gas tax funding to finance a heat pump system for the Masons Hall not be approved. Do I have a motion, please? Director Wally.
Second.
Director Rice. Discussion? Director Vonish.
I just have one question. The service agreement does say, operating costs include heating. And just wondering, just clarification for the community on what that means in relation to a heat pump that would provide heating.
The operational costs would be for the heat pump, paying the monthly electricity bill, that would be operating. And then the actual heat pump install itself would be capital. Of course, the contract prevents any capital improvements being in there. Community Works Funds is also for capital infrastructure. So for any so the actual project itself would be eligible for Community Works Funds, but per the contract, no capital contribution can come from the SRD.
Thank you.
Okay. Director Wally.
Yeah, just out of my own curiosity, is that a contract that could be moderated in the future?
Yes.
So just to add to, the bylaw also specifies that there, or the establishing bylaw says for core operating expenses.
Okay. So all in favor of B? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Director Vonish?
Thank you, Chair. I think when this service was set up, it was really around limiting tax requisition for the hall. And, I think it's pretty clear that it says that capital costs are not included. I think the community is in favor of other funding being able to come to the hall as long as it's not part of tax requisition. So I'd like to make a motion that staff bring back to EASC a review of the service contract and how it might be adjusted so that other sources of funding could still be used at the hall that isn't part of tax requisition.
Did you get all that? Okay, second was Director Wally. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Number 4, the Community Works funding request from Lahaina Farms. Is that correct?
Linnea.
I was so close. Not really? I think there's somebody in the room that would disagree. Farm Society, that the report from the CAO be received, please.
Move receipt. Oh, second.
Oh, that was it. Oh, there we go. Director Rice, Director Vonish, discussion. Oh, sorry, you're sitting close together. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that the application for Lahaina, just messing with you, sorry. Educational Center for Community Works funding to purchase and install a heat pump be denied. Director Wally,
Second.
Director Rice, discussion? Director Vonish?
I agree with the staff's recommendations and the report. I do feel it's unfortunate. It is a center on Cortez that provides a valuable place for youth groups to meet and other activities that do benefit a lot of the community. And I respect the report here, and we'll continue looking for other ways to be able to support this space. Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Number 5, Community Works funding request, Sayward Fishing Game Association. With a report, thank you, Director Wally.
Second.
Director Rice, discussion on receipt. Director Wally?
Just say, Mr. Chair, I have a subsequent motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Director Wally?
I would move option A of the staff report, that a financial contribution of up to $12,000 be approved from the Electoral Area A Community Works Fund for the Sayward Fish and Game Association, subject to finalization of agreement regarding cost sharing between the association and the regional district.
Motion?
I'll second that.
Director Vonish, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. First Nations Reconciliation Framework, the report from the CAO be received.
Move receipt.
Director Moini, Director Chapman, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And B, that the regional district commit to developing First Nations Reconciliation Framework as a formal action plan that supports reconciliation and is in alignment with the TRC calls to action under UNDRIP, and that the province and the federal funding programs be pursued to assist with development of reconciliation framework.
So moved.
Director Chapman.
Second.
Director Vonish, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. BC Ferries, call for nomination. Do I have to hit the gavel when I say that? Call for, no. Okay.
Second.
Hit the gavel. I never hit the gavel. So we've got Director Vonish, Director Rice. On receipt. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried.
There are some options listed in the report.
I'll move option B, that Mark Trombley be nominated for reappointment to the BC Ferry Authority for a further 3-year term.
Second.
Further discussion? Director Mawhinney.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to comment that I felt like a fairly short timeline for the BC Ferries Authority to send a letter on January 12th and ask 5 regional districts to collaborate on a process and finalize that by March 1st. So I wasn't sure if it would be appropriate for you as the chair, maybe, to send them a letter requesting longer lead times in the future for such requests.
Okay, we could do that, eh? Sure. We don't need a motion on that or anything, do we?
No, that can be direction.
Direction to staff. Okay, thank you. Now we're going to number 8. We're still on the other, it's all right?
Motion by Director Badish, Director Rice to include option B.
To include option B. Didn't we go through that?
I don't think you voted on it yet.
Oh, I thought we voted on it. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none? Now we voted on it. Motion is carried. Thank you. Number 8, grant opportunity, emergency support services. Report from the CEO be received.
Move receipt.
Second.
Director Mawhinney, Director Chapman. Discussion. CAO.
Mr. Koopman will speak to this.
Through the chair to the board, emergency support services is the heart of emergency response. These public safety lifeline volunteers are the first ones that make contact with people when they have been displaced to an emergency or disaster during the worst time of their life, assist them with meeting their basic needs and providing the steps to recovery. Before I get into this specific grant, just because this is on the public record, on behalf of the SRD, I want to extend our appreciation and thanks to all emergency support services volunteers, not only in the SRD, but throughout the province. Related to this specific item, it's a proposal in collaboration with 8 local governments and 5 First Nations in the Strathcona and Mount Waddington Regional District to support emergency support services through 2 contract positions, training, exercises, and procurement of equipment. I'm open for any questions.
Directors. Director Chapman.
Chair, I was just wondering if this is an annual cost or is this the one-time cost that's going to be covered by the grant?
Through the chair to Director Chapman, 100% fully funded through the grant.
For more than 1 year or just 1 year?
Through the chair to Director Chapman, we'll have 1 calendar year to use this grant, but this grant has been committed to next year by the province as well. We've been going after this grant regionally for about 6 years now.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Director Vanish.
Thank you, Chair. To question to staff, just I'm not seeing Klahoose First Nation listed on here. Just wondering what the engagement there was and if there's opportunity for them to be included.
Through the chair to Director Von Esch, I had a conversation with Devin Rogers, the manager of infrastructure and development at Klahoose First Nation. They just don't have the bandwidth and capacity to join us at this time.
Thank you.
All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. And B, that the application for the 2024 Emergency Support Service Grant Program for enhancing emergency response on behalf of local governments and First Nations, titles identified in the January 19th, 2024 report from the Chief Administrative Officer be received.
So moved.
Director Chapman? Director Davis? Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried.
Mr. Chairman, I do apologize. I believe that should be to be supported rather than just received.
Did I read it incorrectly?
No, you did, but I think it's being transcribed incorrectly.
It was transcribed incorrectly.
So I think the intent was to get authorization to make or submit an application.
So it's authorization to make or submit an application is the amendment. Did you want to?
I'll move that. I'll second that.
There we go. That was quick. Discussion? All in favor? Discussion? We did that? All in favor? Let me see. What comes next?
Question.
Yeah. Anybody opposed? No? We're good. Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, number 9, Grant Opportunity Emergency Operations Center. That the report from the CEO be received.
Move receipt.
Second.
Director Bonish, Director Chapman, discussion. Mr. Koopman?
So through the chair to the board, similar talk as last grant, just replacing a couple of words. Emergency Operations Center functions as a center where we coordinate the strategic approach to assist first responders at the incident command post during an incident or disaster. The better our EOCs can operate through training, supplies, redundant power, etc., the better we're able to assist those first responders in the field. So this grant is a proposal in collaboration with 7 local governments and 4 First Nations for different training, supplies, exercises to help us accomplish that. And I'm open for any questions.
Director Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. To Mr. Koopman, I want to thank you for your efforts of being proactive, making sure these training opportunities are provided for the people in our area, and I think it's a worthwhile pursuit. Thank you. And everyone else working on it, senior staff and all the staff involved. I think it's a worthwhile effort.
Great. Anyone else? Director Kerr.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Koopman. I also wanted to thank you for showing up yesterday at City Council and giving us a bit of lowdown on the changes to the Emergency Act and answering our questions. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Through the chair to Directors Chapman and Kerr, you're welcome.
Okay. Director Colburn is in support of it as well, as you can read in the chat room on the screen. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And B, that the application be submitted to the 2024 Emergency Operations Grant Program and Enhanced Emergency Response on behalf of local government, First Nations, and titles identified on the January 19th, 2024 report from the CAO, and that the Strathcona Regional District commit to overall management of the grant if the application is successful.
So moved.
Whoa, that was like at the same time. Director Chapman, Director Vonish. Discussion. It wasn't you? Was that you? I apologize, Director Davis. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Thank you, Director Koopman, sorry. You've been demoted. Educational opportunity for directors. The report from the CAO will be received.
Move receipt.
Director Mawhinney, Director Chapman, discussion? Director Vonish.
I just have one thing, and I think another director maybe had an issue with this too. When I clicked into it to try and log in, it forced me to download an authentication app, and it was a really quite difficult process to be able to access that. So I'm not sure if there's something that's changed in the computer system that made that difficult, but just wanted to bring that to attention of other folks that haven't gone into that yet.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, the Directors Portal is specifically designed for ease of access by directors. So if there are any issues of that nature, I would suggest contacting IT. It should be pretty painless and seamless for you to get in there and look at whatever you need to look at.
Because without joking, if you're having a difficult time with it, there's going to be others, not me, of course, because I'm an IT professional, that are going to severely struggle with it. So yeah, we should have that looked at. Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. 2024 draft, 2024 to 2028 financial plan, regional board. Let the report from the CEO be received.
Second.
Director Wally, Director Chapman, discussion. CAO.
Mike has a presentation for us.
Mike?
Good afternoon, everyone. This should be a relatively quick presentation. Everybody's saw the numbers here in December, so the goals for this meeting is just to look at the changes since then, which is primarily going to be concentrated on assessments and the assessment shift, as well as the business, any impact from business cases and spending and surplus changes. Also want to have a quick look at some overall comparatives. The budget document spends a lot of time comparing actuals to budgets and year over year, but the budget document does contain some regional comparatives you could have a look at, and also as well as seek direction for staff to produce a financial plan bylaw for the February 28th meeting. We do have a couple changes stemming from this morning meetings that we're looking to include, but other than that, the tax requisition should be relatively stable, and of course we'll advise of any changes at the next meeting. And a quick apology to the electoral area directors. They're going to see some of these first slides. That'll be a bit of a repeat for them, but hopefully we'll be relatively quick. So first of all, the assessments are essentially what we call the tax base is the total value of all real estate in a particular area. In BC, it's subdivided into 9 different classes. Pardon me?
No, it's online. They have to mute. Keep going. It was somebody online.
Sorry. Into 9 distinct groups that you're probably familiar with. We'll have a look at the next slide. And if anyone recalls during the surplus presentation a while back, there's a couple myths in finance. This is one of the most understood or misunderstood topics, that property taxes are really calculated based on a government's need. They're only distributed to the properties based on their relative value. So whether assessments go up or down, it doesn't really control the amount of tax the regional district receives. It only affects how they're distributed among the populace. Next slide. So here's a look at the 9 various classes, and for each one has a different relative weighting when it comes to taxation. Municipalities can control these weightings, but the regional districts cannot. So we stay with the provincial standards for the conversion factors. So as people well know, a lot of the industry and businesses is effectively taxed at a higher rate. So if you have a shop in your backyard and it's currently residential and it's valued at $100,000, it'll get taxed as $100,000. But if someone was to convert that to a business or another, it would effectively get taxed as a $245,000 piece of property. In our area, especially in the electoral areas, there's lots of different managed forest lands and industry. So the changes in those classes can have quite a bit of effect on the per household tax numbers that you see in your budget. The example we used is a couple of years ago, there were some legislative changes to the managed forest lands. BC Assessment decided that those lands were worth less. So if you have $1 million drop in assessment value across the region, effectively it's like a $300,000 loss of your tax base. So it can have a pretty big impact on the household numbers. So we tend to have a look at them every year. So assessment shift, as is defined in the budget document, is the combination of the two factors, both the regional change in any of the services that are being shared amongst regions, and as well as the shift in the relative assessment classes. So again, all things being equal, if one region's tax base grows at a faster rate than all the other ones, taxes would shift to that area. If assessments grow at a faster rate than all the other classes, you'll have a shift to households. And then for individual homes, if an individual home assessment increases at a faster pace than all the other homes around it, taxes would shift to that home. And again, it's a zero-sum game as far as the assessment shifts. So any area where it goes up, it will go down in another area. So this is the regional average for 2024. It was 3.1%, and that's represented by the dashed line. So if any area is above the dashed line, taxes are going to shift to the area. If any regions are below, it's going to shift away. And then I guess the one big outlier there is Zabalis, which it wasn't a big increase last year, but it kind of looks like the other municipalities from years ago. And individually per class, this chart looks at the overall tax base and how households fared against that. So if the green line is higher than the blue bar, you're going to have taxes shifting in from all the other classes into residences or vice versa. So in Campbell River here, if you recall from the last slide, the overall tax base grew at 2.6%, but houses only grew at 0.2%. So there you're going to see a shift from all the other classes or away from residences and into all the other classes. Business in particular was the one that had a big uptick. It was about a 7% assessment increase. So businesses will see higher pressure and households will see less. Tassus and Zabalis, of course, they're on the opposite side of that spectrum, and they're going, taxes shifting into their area as well as getting shifted into the individual houses. Overall, it's a pretty low effect because the tax rates there are not too high, but the assessment has quite a bit of an impact this year for them. And just a quick note that in your budget documents, there's some 5-year charts that show the trend of all these assessments for anybody who's curious. The other changes we want to have a look at, besides the assessment, is just the the effect of the business cases and any other minor changes. So the first green column is the current shift or the current change of average per household taxes we're looking at for 2024. The column next to it is what we presented in December, and then the column after that for in bold is the change since December. So the majority of it all is just going to be assessment shift. We're relatively stable, and then we made a few minor other changes. Sayward is the outlier just because there's a shared garbage service. So tipping fees are hard to estimate, so we're pretty conservative, but we have a couple more months of bills in there, so we've made a more accurate prediction. That's why there's more of a change in that area. So to have a look at the individual areas, under the title, the top bar will show you the total average per household tax. So for Campbell River, it's 551. So going through the slides, I'll just concentrate on the changes. So Campbell River was 78.78 per home. The assessment shift worked in household favors, and that was about a 14% downward pressure. And again, the big impact there would just be for the gardens, which is shared just with Area D. For Gold River, increased $239 per home, and the assessment shift was favorable for homeowners there as well, so that's putting about 20% pressure down. But again, the total taxes here are $44 for the year. And in Sayward, there was the assessment shifts were quite significant, so that's putting a significant amount of pressure overall. That pushed taxes down to $6.78 a home. But with the other increases in there, the net decrease is only $2.84. And for Tassus, which is a big impact, $3.15 a home, but again, it's only a $26 tax requisition per home, but the assessment shift was 46% of the overall total, and that's it's pretty much out of the regional district's control. And the final one is Zabalas, $629 per home, or sorry, wait, Casey, I found that, but $629 per home for Zabalas, and the assessment shift was pretty big. It was 84% of that, but again, it's only $23 per annual tax charge. And last we got KCFN, and I guess that's a smaller amount. So we don't get the best assessment data for them, but it'll have 2024 will be a pretty minor impact for them. The other change we want to look at is just the total change in operating budget, which is going up 4.4%, and then that 4.4% is funded through taxation, grants, any debt reserve transfers. On page 16. I guess the one thing I want to point out that this chart is zoomed in on the top portion of the graph. The y-axis there doesn't start at 0, so what we're focusing on here is just the changes. The other thing is we have the new fire administration service that's not included in protective services. That was allocated to the general admin. So this is going to be kind of a high-level comparison, but we can get data for regional districts. It's a year delayed, so this is actually looking at the 2022 amounts, but this chart compares the population in the various regional districts versus the total tax requisition collected. So as you can see, the SRD is kind of in line with their similar size taxes around us, or similar size regional districts around us. And lastly, this chart is similar to the last chart, but it organizes all the regional districts by total assessment value. And then I take the total taxes collected divided by the assessment to try and get a rough approximation of a mill rate. And then the linear, or the line is just a linear trend line. So we're still below the kind of the average, but the chart kind of shows what you would expect is the bigger a municipality, you get some economies of scale kicking in, and they're able to deliver services at a lesser cost per assessed value. So that concludes the presentation, but happy to field any questions.
Director Chapman.
Chair, through you to the senior staff. and everyone involved in the budgeting. I'm grateful to see a 4.4% increase. It beats some of the other ones that I've seen in the news where they're upwards 10, 12%. So I'm happy with the 4.4% increase overall. Thank you.
Okay, still on receipt? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. B is that the 2024-2028 financial plan be prepared as a bylaw for consideration at the February 28th, 2024 meeting of the board.
So moved.
Director Chapman, Director Wally, discussion? Director Rice.
Thank you, Chair. Like I commented this morning, I cannot support this budget at this point in time. When I take a look at what is specific to Area D, I'm quite concerned with the city services. 28% increase, 35% increase, and I'm trying to figure out, what is going to be the increases over 5 years. And nobody can tell me those. It seems like I don't have a whole lot of transparency to make a good decision. What I would hope is that between now and the next board meeting, that somehow we can have some one-on-one meetings so that I can become better informed about the rising costs, particularly with fire. That is becoming a fairly large number. My estimates are that fire is going to cost $535 per household, and that's spread out about 1,300 households. There's other increases. So it's becoming quite challenging for Area D to deliver a budget that brings something meaningful for the folks in terms of new things. Pretty much all I can do this year is maintain the status quo, and I would like to do more. So, no, I'm not going to support this budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on receipt? Yeah, we're on B. I did receipt. Director Mawhinney.
Thank you, Chair. And this may be the wrong time to ask this question. I think I might have missed the previous receipt time to ask a question. I was curious about a couple things in the budget that I noticed. One of them was the installation of e-bike charging stations, and I'd gone through the minutes and searched for the word e-bike or charging and couldn't seem to find any reports or anything, so I was curious if there was more information coming to the board about that. And it's obviously being funded by a grant, so that's great. And then the other thing I noticed that I was curious about is that the Community Health Services Coordinator position has increased from 0.7 to full-time, and I was curious if that was based on a change in the contract with Island Health, or what was the impetus for the change?
CEO.
I'll answer the Community Health Network one, and maybe Renee can speak to the e-bike charging. I think you're right, it's a grant. Community Health Coordinator position, I'll go back to the start of it. It was Island Health funded it, I believe, about $75,000 or $80,000, and we backward engineered it in terms of the regional district taking an administrative charge out of it, needing to support the community health coordinator in an administrative way, and then whatever funds was left over, we found a rate that would be appropriate for that person, divided it into the remainder, and came up with a number of hours. So Island Health has increased the allocation they're giving to us, allowing us to make that a full-time position, creating those hours. So yeah, the funding has increased. We wanted it to be full-time to start with. They weren't funding it there, and now they've grown it to be full-time funding.
Thank you. That's great to hear.
Just a quick note, the e-bikes were introduced as part of the Growing Communities Fund. That's where the funding source is.
And I think that must have came out of a transportation study report that we pulled out of. Where's Renee? Where'd you disappear to?
Good afternoon, Board. There was a carryover from an active transportation study. We had previously applied for a grant, and at the time it was unsuccessful. So to continue that project, it was put into the fund that
The Growing Communities
Growing
Fund,
Communities
which
Fund.
was presented to the board as a menu of options there.
Okay, we're good. Director Davis.
Yeah, through the chair to staff. I just want to better explanation so I understand it of why TASA's got such a big increase? Is this just based on our assessments going up so much?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'd have to look into it more to see of any shift. But the issue you get when there's small communities with relatively few homes, BC Assessment looks at recent sales. So if you happen to have one sale in your community and that happened to have a big spike in the value, it can affect all the other assessment values. I don't want to speak to the BC Assessment's internal workings, but I've noticed that when I've looked into area B, it's got relatively few homes and then relatively few sales. But they will look at comparatives and then draw a conclusion from a small sample size and expand that to the entire community. So the other thing with Zabalis, I believe it actually had a decline last year. So that could have been the exact opposite effect, where they had surprised by one sale, so it would lower the entire class.
Okay, thanks for that. I just like to have a really good understanding as we try and keep our residential taxes down, and they did go up quite a bit last year, and now I see another big hit coming. So I need to fully understand that so I can explain it to our residents. Thanks.
So if I can, Mr. Chair, just to put some of it in perspective, the percentages may look high for TASAs, but the overall dollars, I think it was $6 per home. That's not per thousand, or that's a total $6 per home on, I think, a complete taxation of $22 in whole. So each home in TASAs pays $22 of regional taxation here. So if I can help further explain, maybe I can, maybe I can't, is if you have a net 100% amount of assessment taxation in a municipality, and you have these 9 different assessment layers in there, there's a shift in value amongst them. And if the residential shift bloats the residential assessments higher than the rest of the classes, then the portion of that shift, so you're shifting wealth, if you will, to the individual residential homes, and therefore they're paying the shift of 100% taxes, and more portion of that is going towards them. So you've still got, let's say $100 in whole, and you've got these 9 classes. It's just, where does that shift happen? Where is the activity and where is the assessments? So what you can say to folks is their assessments residentially have grown, and therefore it shifted away from the other classes into the residential, and that has bloated their annual taxation. So when it shifts away from them, which we've seen, and it happens in all areas, there's a shift every year, it just floats around, and it happens to have floated more into residential homes, again, maybe because of sales activities, the assessments have gone up, and there's a little bit more. But at the end of the day, you're $6 there. That's what it the percentages, like Zabalis, you look at the graph and the bars, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's 33%. That translates into like $3 total. Again, not per thousand.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Okay, still on B. Anyone else? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Sorry? Oh, you opposed? I apologize. Director Rice is opposed. Number 12, Strathcona Gardens Commission. Director's appointments, that the report from the CAO be received.
Move receipt.
Director Mawhinney.
Second.
Director Sinnott. Discussion.
This, if Ms. Chair, is more of a kind of administrative housekeeping exercise, communications between the City of Campbell River and ourselves. Director Kerr, we've always treated you as being a member of the commission, so treat this, please, as more housekeeping than anything, and the resolutions include a way that we won't have to deal with it in this way moving forward.
Okay, so on receipt, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. B, that the appointment of Director Kerr as alternate member of the Strathcona Gardens Commission be rescinded, and that Director Kerr be appointed as a full member of the Strathcona Gardens Commission for 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Director Chapman. Director Rice, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And C, that the draft be prepared for the board's review that would eliminate or replace of some provision, wow, obsolete? I got to learn how to say that again. Provision by bylaw number 1352.
So moved.
Second.
Director Sinnott, Director Rice, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. 13, Community Health Network, Table of Partners Appointments. The report from the CAO be received.
Move receipt.
Second.
That was Director Mawhinney, Director Bonish, discussion.
Mr. Chair, similar to the previous report, we've had dueling terms of references. We've cleaned them up, and we've always treated Director Chapman as an appointment on the Community Health Network. This just clears that up.
Thank you. Director Mawhinney.
Thank you, Chair. I read the terms of reference that were attached to this report, and I noticed that it states that each of the appointed positions may elect one alternate that will have voting rights. And I'm curious if that means that here at the board, we should be assigning alternate directors? So maybe that's a question to staff.
Mr. Yates.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I think the board can certainly appoint alternate directors if it wishes. That is totally up to the board. There is provision for it. So if the board wishes to do that, then by all means. I'm not going to nominate anyone.
Let's get through the motions.
We'll get through the motion and then go. Okay, that was on receipt.
Just need to vote.
Yep. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. B is that the appointment of Director Mawhinney and Director Chapman represent as the Community Health Network referred group and be rescinded, and that Director Mawhinney and Director Chapman be appointed to the board's representatives of the Table of Partners for the Strathcona Community Health Network. Motion, please.
Move recommendation.
Thank you, Director Rice. Do I have a second? Director Davis, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Do you have a motion you want to make, Director Mawhinney?
I'm afraid to nominate somebody. I don't know. Does anybody want to be an alternate?
Well, they're just jumping right out of their seat for it.
I think Michael Lott.
Oh, Michael Lott.
Michael Lott?
Okay.
I will be happy to.
No? Michael's saying no. No, not Michael. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, 2 directors is probably adequate. One doesn't show up, the other one.
Okay, so we're good then.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay,
And can't the director always send their own alternate?
No, not on the Community Health Network, no.
no. So if you can't make it, I believe part of the bylaw said the vice chair had to go. Is that correct? Was that something I read somewhere?
Didn't hear that.
Oh, you didn't hear that? Swear to God, I read that somewhere. It seems like a good rule, doesn't it? Okay, bylaws. Number 464, Area D water meter reimbursements. Report from the CAO be received.
Move receipt.
Thank you, Director Rice. Director Wally, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. B, that bylaw number 464, being the bylaw to amend the rates charges for the use of electoral area D water system, now be introduced and read for the first time.
Move recommendation.
Director Rice? Director Wally, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. C, that the rules be suspended for bylaw 464, given second and third reading. Director Chapman.
Second.
Director Rice. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And D, that bylaw 464 being electoral area D water service rates and regulation from 2018, amendment number 5, be reconsidered, finally passed and adopted.
Move recommendation.
Director Rice.
Second.
Director Chapman. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Thank you. Number 2, bylaw 508, revenue anticipation borrowing. Receipt? Thank you. Director Wally, Director
Second.
Chapman. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And B, that bylaw 508 being the bylaw to authorize the borrowing of funds in anticipation of receiving revenue, now be introduced and read for the first time. Director Wally, Director
Second.
Chapman. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. C, that the rules be suspended for bylaw 508, given second and third reading. Director Chapman.
Second.
Director Moini. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that bylaw 508, being revenue anticipation borrowing authorization bylaw 2024, now be reconsidered, finally passed and adopted. Director Wally?
Second.
Director Rice. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Bylaw 510, Quadra Island bulk water regulations. That the report from the CEO be received.
Move receipt.
Director Moini, Director Vonish. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Bylaw 510 being a bylaw to amend the zoning regulations application of Quadra Island area be introduced and read for the first time. Director Moini?
So moved, and I would like to speak at some point about this. May I, sir?
Okay, to second, Director Wally, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just for the benefit of the directors and any folks who may be tuned in, I wanted to give a little explanation of why the motion is the way it is. Originally, when this came forward on a board agenda, staff had offered a recommendation of waiving a public hearing, but I did receive, at least at that point, 30 emails and messages telling me that the community would like a chance to discuss the bylaw. And later along in the process, it was determined that as it's a regulatory bylaw, there is no public hearing component. So this is why we're agreed to have a public information session to hear from residents and their input. And that, I just wanted to explain that for anybody that wanted to understand why there's going to be a public information meeting. And I also had a slight edit to the motion if you wanted me to read it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? CAO.
Well, Director Moini said she had an edit to the motion. That we already, you moved it and it got seconded. Is that the motion or a subsequent one?
It's for C.
What's that? Oh, okay, so that's not on the floor yet.
Okay. All in favor of B? Opposed to B? Electoral areas only? Okay, the motion is carried. C, that the public information session held on Quadra Island residents to provide feedback on bylaw 510 and that Director Moini be authorized to chair the Public Information Center session, and that bylaw 510 be returned for further consideration following the conclusion of the public information session, electoral areas only. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to just change the last phrasing where it says that bylaw number 510 be returned to the Electoral Area Services Committee for further consideration following the conclusion of the public information session.
Okay, second by Director Wally. Discussion? All in favor? I'm sorry? Electoral areas, yeah. Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Thank you. Bylaw 512 and 515, Proposal Regional Housing Service.
Move receipt.
Thank you.
Second.
Director Moini, Director Chapman. Discussion on receipt. Director Moini?
Thank you, Chair. I noticed that the report mentioned that there were 392 valid electoral response forms. I'm curious if staff can provide any feedback on the geographical representation of those responses.
Mr. Yates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am going by memory, but I do believe there were some from Quadra that were disallowed. And honestly, I'd have to go and check to see what other areas, but there were very few that were rejected as being either incomplete or lacking evidentiary documents to support the claim.
Oh, sorry, I meant where the ones that were received, which were.
Your microphone, please.
Sorry, I was wondering which ones were valid forms, where they came from. The sort of like the generalization of the geographic location.
Mr. Chairman, I can advise the board as follows. It looks like there were 111 approximately from Campbell River, 81 from Cortez Island, 66 from Quadra Island, and 133 from the Sayward area.
Okay, still on receipt. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that B, that bylaw number 512, being the Regional Housing Service Establishment Bylaw 2023, B 208, now reconsidered and finally passed and adopted. Director Chapman?
Second.
Director Rice? Discussion? Director Wally?
Yeah, I just for the record am going to vote against these. It's the will of my constituents, the vast majority of them were in those forms to oppose it, so it's appropriate that I would oppose.
Anyone else? No? Okay, motion is, all in favor? Opposed? One opposed, Director Wally. Okay, the motion is carried. That was B. C, that bylaw 515, being the Regional Housing Loan Authority, bylaw 223, be now reconsidered, finally passed and adopted. Do I have a motion, please? Director Chapman?
Second.
Director Sinnott? Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? One opposed, Director Wally. The motion is carried. Bylaw 517, Electoral Area D rezoning for RZ 11D 23, that the report from the CAO be received.
Move receipt.
Director Rice? Director Wally, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. And B, that the correspondence received in response of the public notice regarding bylaw 517 be received.
Move receipt.
Director Rice? Director Wally, discussion? Director Mawhinney?
Thank you, Chair. I think probably all of the directors received the correspondence that was attached. And what I noticed is that there was an updated version of the correspondence which was provided to the directors by email this morning. And it's not attached to the agenda. And it just feels to me like a very complex or like rushed process to be receiving correspondence that's up until 12 o'clock on the day of the board. So I'm not sure how we're going to be able to adjust this process in the future, but hopefully there can be a better way of having a little bit more time for us to examine what's being represented by the community.
I'm sorry?
Excuse me, I'm assuming that's just comment because we had a motion at East that I think a report's going to come back to help address that, correct? Yeah.
So that's just a comment. Okay. So we're still on B? Yes. Anyone else? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. C, that bylaw 517, being bylaw to amend bylaw 1404, being Campbell River Area Zoning 1991, be introduced and read for the first time.
Move recommendation.
Director Rice, Director Wally, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Okay. D is that bylaw 517 be given second reading.
Move recommendation.
Director Rice, second. Director Vonish. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion's carried. Bylaw 518, electoral area D rezoning, RZ 1D22, that the report be received by the CAO.
Move receipt.
Director Rice?
Second.
Director Chapman, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. B, the correspondence received in response to the public notification regarding bylaw 518 be received.
Move receipt.
Director Rice, second.
Second.
Director Chapman, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. C, that bylaw 518, being the bylaw to amend the zoning regulation application for electoral area D, now be introduced and read for the first time.
Move recommendation.
Director Rice? Director Wally, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. And D, that bylaw 518 be given second reading.
Move recommendation.
Director Rice.
Second.
Director Vonish. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Bylaw 519, rezoning application electoral area D, that the report from the CAO be received.
Move receipt.
Director Rice, Director Wally, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. B, that the report on the second public hearing bylaw for bylaw 519 and all related records be received.
Move receipt.
Director Rice, Director Wally, discussion? Director Rice.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reiterate from the applicant's point of view that this has been a frustrating process for them to work through. There was a lot of concern going into a second public hearing, what was going to happen, were things going to come out of the woodwork. Thankfully, the response to the second public hearing was quite outstanding. Of the written submissions, I believe there was 115 written submissions. 105 support this application. What I find ironic is that comparing the no's and the opposition to the extra density, those results were the same as the first public hearing. So 3 no's and 8 were opposed to the extra density. So I think in fairness, let's get this done and vote yes on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Wally?
Yeah, I'll just note that the reason why I am supporting this is because electoral area D has a new OCP, which allows a minimum lot size of 1 hectare, where the previous one, where the first public hearing was attended, had a minimum size of 2 hectares. That's why I opposed it in the first place. That's changed now, so now I can support it. That's the logic behind it.
Okay, anyone else? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, B is carried. C, that bylaw 519 be given third reading.
Move recommendation.
Director Rice, Director Wally, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. D, that bylaw 519 being the Campbell River Area Zoning Bylaw 1991 Amendment Number 65 now be reconsidered, finally passed and adopted.
Move recommendation.
Director Rice,
Second.
Director Vonish, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? No opposed, the motion is carried. Thank you. Number 8, bylaw 522, Cortez Island Dog Control Service, that the report from the CAO be received.
So moved.
Director Rice, pardon me, Director
Second.
Vonish, then Director Rice? No, you're just going for your mouse. Director Mawini,
Yes.
we'll call you. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Look at that, I'm dropping them like flies now. Here we go. Third reading. 522 be rescinded. Director Wally? Director Mawini, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. C, that bylaw 522 be amended by deleting the third clause of the preamble. Could you say that again? Preamble. Thank you very much. And replacing in the following, and whereas approved by the electors and been obtained in accordance with the S345 of Local Government Act. Motion, please.
So moved.
Director Mawini, Director Vonish for second. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. D, that bylaw for 522 be amended by adding a new section 5A as followed, annual requisition limit. Motion, please. Sorry?
Second.
So moved? Sorry, your microphone wasn't on. I couldn't hear you there. Okay, thank you. We've got a second in Director Rice. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. 5A. That was B?
That was D, so now we're on E.
That was D.
No, E. That was D.
Then we're going here.
That's part of that.
Yeah.
This is the next one.
Okay, E, that bylaw 522 be given third reading as amended.
So moved.
Director Mawini. Second. Director Vonish. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Thank you. Correspondence. This is one of those really great times for you to jump in and say in its entirety.
Do you want me to jump in and move that the correspondence be received in its entirety?
Yeah, number one seems a little lengthy to sit here and read, but I should read all the names?
I'd like to pull number 8.
Number 8, anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to pull number 1 and number 9, please.
Julie is got.
Number 1 and number 9?
Julie is trying to.
Julie?
Good afternoon, everyone. 5 and 7 have requests in them, so I'm wondering if that's something that we should be responding to.
Okay, so we have the ones that are not pulled are 3, 4, 6.
2, 3, 4, and 6.
2, 3, 4, and 6. So I have a motion to receive 2, 3, 4, and 6, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Okay, Rob, Director Mawini, you're starting with number 1.
I would like to start by moving receipt of correspondence number 1.
Second? Who did second? Director Davis. I thought maybe that was Director Kerr. No, it wasn't Director Kerr. Okay, Director Davis, discussion? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I think you probably have all looked at that long list and realized that there are 136 letters here, correspondence from another 136 residents of Area C and Area A, residents who have taken the time and made an effort to share their concerns with this Board of Directors. In addition to these letters, I continue to hear directly from residents that they believe that electoral area residents should be formally asked through some sort of process if they want to be included in a service, rather than have such a decision made by a subset of this board. People choose to move to Area D because of its proximity to services and Strathcona Gardens, and knowing their taxes include these. People move to an island, knowing the distance to indoor sporting facilities, and often preferring the availability of alternate outdoor recreation options. I really hope that when the staff report regarding including the electoral areas and Village of Sayward in the service is returned to this table, that directors reflect on the clear sentiment expressed by hundreds of islanders, including this correspondence we are receiving today, and the choices that residents have made and where they live. And that in that decision, we choose an option which respects this correspondence and these thoughts that have been shared. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was on number 1. So to receive number 1, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Okay, who has number 5? Julie? Director Colburn?
The audio's working, but.
Hi, I'm here. Move receipt.
Okay. Second, Director Wally, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none? Oh, you wanted to speak. Go ahead. I can barely hear you.
Are you acknowledging me?
There you go. Now I can hear you.
Embedded in here, so that's the reason I wanted to pull it, was for discussion. This is a $600. If we were to do this as a help for a room rental for the is it the Parkinson's Society? Yeah. Then would it come out of general revenue?
Well, we have a regional grant and aid it could come out of, but the financial representation is the same, yes.
So is there any room in that? I mean, I know it's the beginning of the year, so there's probably some money left in that budget. I just think this is something that does affect everybody in all areas in the world. And so I would have a subsequent to support this. But then that would be up to the board to support my motion or second it or pass it.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Do you have a subsequent, Director Colburn?
I do, and that would be that the board support the application from, was Edie writing this down?
Yes.
So that the board support an application from Campbell River Parkinson's Society in the amount of $600 to come out of regional grant and aid budget.
Second.
Director Vonage, second. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Thank you, Director Colburn. Number 7, who had 7? Director Colburn.
Hi.
Hi.
Let me just find it here. Oh, jeez. This is just a question through to staff. Have we ever put an ad for the regional district in anything?
I don't recall a request from MAD before myself, no.
Should we do a motion to receive first, please, Director Colburn?
Oh, so move receipt.
Second.
Discussion, go ahead.
That was all. It was just a question to staff. I don't think this one is strange because they're putting it in the form of an ad. They want us to buy an ad to support their cause, and it just seems a little weird to me to be advertising the regional district. So I was just asking staff if there had been a precedent ever. I'm not going to do anything with this otherwise.
Okay, I think the question was answered, correct? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so on receipt, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Okay, number 8 was Director Sinnott?
Yeah, I'm passing it off to Director Smythe.
I'm sorry, I'll have to check the rules and whether or not you can actually.
So she jumped in because she recognized that I was falling asleep over here, but I did have questions on this.
First, we're on motion to receive.
So I'd like to put the motion to receive.
Second, Director Chavin, discussion, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm new to this because I'm not part of this board, but I read this and, the city of Campbell River is going through a master transportation plan as well. So I just want to know the background on why we're doing two transportation plans at the same time. And whether there's a need to coordinate the two. I just don't know the background on it. It just seems a bit odd.
This is from IT.
So
This isn't from us.
maybe
Yeah,
I can.
It's funding from ICT, but it's two transportation plans.
Yeah, I can possibly fill Director Smythe in. So the regional district is doing what I'll characterize as a sub-regional transportation plan where the board excluded areas B and C. What you see here is a transportation grant that was provided to the Cortez Community Economic Development Group to do what it looks like as a independent transportation, I don't know, I'm going to say study plan for Quadra and Cortez. That doesn't have anything to do with the regional district.
Okay, so I'm confused on, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we originally talked about the regional transportation, Cortez and Quadra did not want to participate. Is that correct?
I think that decision was made
That, that motion was on the previous board, but I'll say that was reinforced with this new board.
Okay. So you didn't want to participate in the RD and now you want to go on your own. Is that correct? I'm confused
Is that a
as well.
question to
Yes.
the directors? Because I personally have I have like extremely tiny amounts of information from anything to do with this application. It's
Okay.
done on behalf, it was applied for by the Cortez Island Economic Development Association. And I think I learned everything that I learned about it from this press release that is
Okay.
included here.
Thank you. Then I'll talk to Director Vonish.
Yeah, again, this is an application I wrote. This came from Association on Cortez. I have spoken before around what I think are the benefits of a very small sub-regional service for Cortez and Quadra that would build on some of the ride-sharing programs that happen and working with Clahoos and other initiatives that might support Quadra and Cortez. But this particular grant application, I didn't have anything to do with.
Okay. Thank you. Director Chapman?
So just for my clarity, we're going to have one sub-regional service for transportation done by the regional district, and the islands are by the Economic Development Society, so we're not going to have two sub-regional services, just one. And they're going to do a private study on their own.
Well, what I do know is we're in the midst of producing a sub-regional service that excludes area B and C. And what I do know from this correspondence is that the Cortez Community Economic Development got a grant to do, I suppose you can call it a sub-regional service for area B and C.
Isn't it a study?
Study, whatever.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Director Wally?
Yeah, I was just thinking, it's probably not fair to call it a sub-regional service because it's got nothing to do with the regional district. It's their own thing, doing that association, they can do what they want. The Village of Sayward has their own transportation van, age-friendly van, that is a transportation system. It's got absolutely nothing to do with the regional district, and this one doesn't either.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want to clarify. We don't have two sub-regional, just one.
Okay, thank you.
I know that Director Smythe mentioned what the City of Kamloops is doing right now with their master transportation plan, and part of it is coordinating reports, which includes connections to Quadra. This needs better coordination. I wouldn't mind that the regional district take a fresh second look and get back to us on how all these little pieces are moving, because if you don't hit the right timing, it's not going to get an ROCP, and things won't work together. And whether or not there's economies of scale or the City of Kamloops is paying too much because we're not including other regions, I'd like to know more from staff's perspective of what our options are going forward. It's prime time right now. Kamloops is going to drive everything in terms of its master transportation plan. You guys better get on the bus, so to speak, or else you won't have those connections you're hoping to see.
Can you bring some information to the next board meeting like that?
If you make a motion for a staff report, we can coordinate with city staff and bring a report.
Yes, I'll make that motion. We're right in the middle of having our last presentation to council deferred, and it's coming back to council relatively soon, but I've got a lot of comments back to staff personally that have to be worked through with the mayor wants to attend the meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, but we're still on receipt. hang on to the motion. We're still on receipt.
And Julie has her hand up.
Okay, did you want to speak on receipt, Julie? Director Colburn?
Yeah, I just have one comment. And the comment is there are a lot of small grassroots ride sharing companies that are, for instance, there's a bus company that's expanding their area to come up to the North Island right now. So while I appreciate and would be interested in hearing more about what everyone is doing, it's really hard to capture when private business is making moves that we don't know about. So I don't know how fulsome that staff report can be to actually catchment all of these little tiny pieces of these small private businesses that are trying to capture and serve the communities. I just wanted to put that comment in there.
What we're doing actually in the study is looking at private operators as well. We're looking at First Nations, we're looking at BC Transit, we're looking at the Health Authority. So our study is actually pulling all those together. There's no intent that we're going to start an independent transportation service that overlays any of those things. So the work we're doing on is actually getting in the weeds and pulling all those operators together to hopefully bring back to the board a plan that is not going to be a single operator service. It's not going to happen. It's going to be made up of all these pieces.
Okay, Director Wally?
Further comment?
Go ahead.
Can I just reply to that thank you very much for doing that, and what a massive job you guys have ahead of you, because I've been hearing a lot from small operators and lots of people making different moves and doing different things. And so what an undertaking. Thank you, staff.
Okay. Director Wally?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the conversation that Island Link that has been in business is a major operator, been in business for years and years. And of course, they're expanding their service from Victoria all the way to Port Hardy, going over Alberni, and there's probably options for them to expand into other communities as well. But as a board, as a regional district, what we don't want to do, of course, is be in competition with private operators. I don't think that's a fair competition. In addition to that, as I pointed out in the past, we have private operators that have delivery services from Campbell River to little communities, and we certainly don't want to be in competition, put them out of business. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, so appreciate that. We're absolutely not going to be in competition. We're looking to complement and put the pieces together. We are going to be dependent, actually, on all these different operators and pulling them all together. It's a large portion of it is the coordination of what's going on. I met with the MLA last week, and Island Health is funding at least 3 different types of transportation for folks, and there's a lot of redundancy in that alone. So I'm very confident there's 80% of the players are already in there. This service we're looking at will look at complementing that and pulling it all together, but there won't be any duplication. We're not intending to put anyone out of service. We, in fact, are going to need these operators to pull this service together.
Thank you. Director Mawhinney?
Thank you, Chair. I actually was just going to mention the same thing that, well, sort of the same thing that Director Wally said, which was that it was great news to see that Island Link was expanding their service to Port Hardy and creating a new option for North Island residents.
Twice a week.
Yeah, great.
Right. Director Smythe?
Yeah, thanks. This was the whole point of me being confused by this, because like I'm in the transportation business. It's all about coordinating different services. So we don't want to take away from any service. We want to enhance them. We want them to coordinate with each other, and we want transportation plans to mesh. Right? So that brought up my confusion. Why would you have 2 separate transportation studies? They should all coordinate. Like I got family on Cortez Island right now. So they came from Campbell River. So everything should mesh. And that was the whole point of me reading this and wondering why you would run 2 parallel transportation studies at the same time and not coordinate them.
Thank you.
Can I call the
we're still on
question?
receipt. Call the question. Sorry.
I still have a comment. Yeah, as the original sponsor of the motion through the Municipal Services Committee for this regional transportation service, it was to fill a gap that was quite wide at that point. Like my community has none of this, and we certainly don't want to be left out in the cold while other communities are being served. So there is a need for this, and the fact that private operators are stepping up is great. If we can find a way to facilitate this and expand it to serve all communities in our regional district, that would be great. So I continue to support that.
Okay. Thank you. And then we have Director Vonish.
Just responding to Director Smythe, really appreciate your comments there. I think the big thing as far as what Campbell River is thinking about is just knowing that, every half hour there's a ferry coming from Quadra. And every 9:15 a.m., 11:15, 1:15, 3:15, 5:15, 7:15, there's the ferries end up connecting, so Cortez people are landing in Campbell River. So I think that that's kind of the simple of what the coordination I would be thinking about from your end. And I think if you did consider transportation options, like there's a bus stop or something at the ferry, I think that just taking that into consideration would be huge.
Okay, we're still on receipt. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried.
So I'd like to make this follow-up motion that we ask for a staff report in terms of coordinating, and I'll have some reasons with the City of Campbell River and the various transportation plans and studies that are going on. Is that sufficient for the motion?
Yep. Second.
Okay.
Director Chapman, second.
Yeah, if I could speak to the motion. Besides the issue of multiple plans going ahead, and I just want to direct the attention to the people in Cortez and Quadra, Campbell River is parking. Parking issues in the downtown core are significant for you guys. And if we go ahead with our transportation plans without hearing from you, you may be surprised by some of the impacts that will come about. We add pay parking and other types of parking. It isn't just coordinating a pickup with a bus at the ferry. There's a lot of things that go into our plans. And then when we're trying to develop our airport and other regional transportation options, because we are the hub, we need to know what the needs of our outlying communities are for use of those services, including all sorts of other things like medical. We're the center of the community for the hospital services. It's quite complex for us. So we do need to hear that. And I think the SRD has a role to play. Thanks.
Okay, so we're still on the subsequent, correct? Further discussion?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to mention that, I totally agree and appreciate that. And, if there's studies that you're doing that would value from Cortez input, then, I'd be happy to help distribute, that survey or whatever to Cortez so that it's useful for you. But I would also say that, that it would be sort of inefficient use of SRD staff time to try and coordinate, how people are getting from Cortez to the Campbell River Ferry as something that you really need to think about, or that would be useful for using these resources to get there. I think it's really great to have Cortez input, and I really appreciate what you said. I just don't think it needs to expand so much that we're taking every single consideration, especially when these smaller communities are really we'd like to do some really simple things ourselves. Cortez has a room for rider program that's just a placard that you put in your car that says, "I'm willing to give you a ride across Quadra." And these are just such cheap, inefficient ways to move people without thinking about buses and other things. So I really do appreciate the sentiment, and I think in terms of efficiencies, that it does make sense for really to sort of think about what's happening on Vancouver Island and the West Coast as what the original study and potential service is considering. Thank you.
If I can just follow up, it's much more complex. The development of EVs and charging stations are a major concern, particularly at terminals and ports. And we don't have any input on how much the usage would be, for example, on the Campbell River side, if we had to put charging stations in or around those areas to accommodate people, because when you don't have a lot of infrastructure on your outer islands, you're going to be using Campbell River. There's a lot of layers that the regional district now needs to think of for the new development of technologies. That's all.
Okay, Director Colburn, you have your hand up.
I do, and just the last thing that I wanted to say about this is I'm glad to hear that staff is already doing this in coordination with our transportation study, and that also that they're in discussion, or that they're talking to the MLA and Island Health, and I hope that those considerations would be as well, including Mount Washington, just because of our geographical invisible boundaries sometimes don't translate correctly if we're just making it about the Strathcona Regional District. So I'm glad to hear that CAO Leach is already doing that, and that would be included in this as well.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Call to question. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Number 9.
Move receipt.
Move receipt. Director Mawhinney. Director Chapman, second. Discussion.
May I? Thank you, Chair.
Please.
I had a question to staff on this item. The letter says that the funding is for, quote, immediate support to fulfill the requirements of recently enacted legislated requirements, which has the word requirement twice in it, but that, yeah. So the question is, in the case of the SRD, what are the gaps and the needs of this legislation that this funding will be directed towards? And is requesting a report on this the best way to get this information? I do have a motion prepared, if that is the correct.
Well, I'll answer it, and then maybe you decide whether you want a resolution or not. So we've got, along with other member munis, I think $150,000 to use in a number of ways to address these new bills in housing. And I believe it's quite liberal. And what I was intending to do, it you'll see at the financial plan bylaw, unless you have a better idea, is I was going to split the housing service past. I was going to put some of the money in the housing service. I was going to put another half of the money in the planning service and use it for consulting, training, education on the new bills and the implementation that is in front of us. So that's what I was intending to do, unless you or the board has a different or better idea.
Well, I did notice in the report, and I can't open it right now, but that each municipality received their own funding, separate. So I felt like this funding was potentially best directed at how the legislation requirements will affect electoral areas.
And so I put it in planning, because there's only 4 participants in the planning function. So that's where I've put the money, a portion of the money. And although we can redirect it in the housing service, I have no idea what we're going to do. But I just split the money for now between the two. But yes, in the EA planning.
Okay. Okay. Well, will you be bringing forward some ideas for how to spend that money to the EA committee then?
Yes, but at a high level, it's going to be for education, training, consultants, legal, that kind of thing, because they're bills and we want to know all the implications that they're going to have on us. And in my mind, that likely is going to come from external resources such as consultants and lawyers. So earmarking that money for that.
That's great to know, because I feel like there's a lot of questions that are unanswered. So I'm looking forward to getting some answers.
Okay.
One comment.
One comment from Director Rice.
This was discussed at the last day's meeting. If you recall, you did mention that there was money coming and that you would be utilizing it for training. So that was how we were told that we were going to come up to speed with all of the new legislation. So again, this was already discussed at the last day's meeting.
Okay. We're on receipt. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Q, nothing. R, nothing. New business, nothing. New business?
Do we have the First Nations?
That's an addendum. Okay, nothing under new business, addendum item. That the addendum item be received.
Move receipt.
Yes. it should be considered.
Oh, well, I have to be received. Second by Director Davis. Thanks for jumping in there, Director Davis. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. First Nations participation in the board's meeting, that the report from the CAO be received.
Move receipt.
Director Moini, Director Bronesh. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And B, that a formal letter be written to each of the First Nations whose territories that the SRD operates within, inviting them to participate as a non-voting member of the board, and that a report be prepared regarding the honorarium policy on non-voting members of the board. Motion, please.
I will move that.
Director Moini.
I'll second that.
Director Vanish. Discussion. Director Wally.
Just a couple of questions for staff here. The first one was when the Cayucot First Nation was first a non-voting member of the board, I don't believe we paid them an honorarium, did we? Honorarium?
I think what we offered them up, if the nation wasn't supporting their transportation and meeting pay, we would, and I believe the nation at that time did. So I don't think we had to pay.
Okay, and then the second question is, what stage of their treaty negotiations were they at when we actually formally invited them to the board?
I believe their treaty was complete, yeah.
Treaty was complete? No, as non-voting members though.
Yeah, they had 10 years, their treaty, they completed their treaty and it gave them a 10-year window to join, so they came as a non-voting member with the complete treaty.
And one more question before I make a few comments here is, how many First Nations roughly are we contemplating?
I believe we have 10. One already exists and sits on the table, so 9 additional.
9 additional. So we got 14 and 9, that'd be 23 potential people sitting at the table here. We're going to have to.
More tables.
Board table, yeah, we have to run out the door there. To me, it doesn't seem appropriate for the First Nations who are not in the treaty process, or maybe just in the very first stages of it, because there's no guarantee that they will ever ratify a treaty. They, at any time, can decide, well, that's not what we're looking for, or that's not enough, and drop out. 23 people is kind of like the solid waste of time board. It's very difficult to debate an issue with 23 people. And I know this optically is nice and it looks good and all that. I personally don't feel it's practical. That's my comment. And I'm opposed.
Okay, call the question. Oh, more, sorry, Director Kerr, I didn't see your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Just following up on Director Wally's comments. Did this come as a response to direction from the provincial government, or where did it come from?
It came out of the First Nations Relations Committee, I believe.
But in terms of policy, is there, I mean, because basically, so this is.
Yeah, there's no federal or provincial policy that insists that it enables it. There's policy, there's provincial policy that enables it for regional districts, but there's nothing that says you must or.
So the existing policy that we're following right now is dictated, though. That once they finish their treaty process, that they can sit at the table. So
there, as I understand it, the treaty shall include that, they have a whole bunch of things to negotiate, but one of them be that they join the regional district as part of that, and then they get a window of time to join. So there's 27 regional districts, and there's only this regional district in Alberni-Claycott that have First Nations sitting as voting members. I don't know how many have observers there, because that's conditional upon, are you a treaty nation, and have you finished your treaty or what stage you're in. I believe most of them are in negotiations, but it is enabling legislation that allows us to have First Nations that are treaty nations at the board, either as non-voting or participants should their treaty be completed. And So I suppose we're honoring that, is that legislation allows us to it. They negotiated in their treaty to sit on the board, and with KCFN, we've come forward with that. So there's other nations that are in the treaty process. As you know, we aren't exactly, sitting at the tables aware of everything they're negotiating. So I couldn't honestly tell you if it is in their treaties, the other nations that are joining, that they join the regional district. I'm not certain it's a requirement within their treaty. I don't know if that's 100%, no. I think they're encouraged to, but I don't think it's a requirement. So I don't even know if it's in the other 9's treaty negotiations to consider being on the regional. I have no idea, because again, we don't get that type of information. They're not sharing with it. All we have been shared with by MER is that they're encouraging the treaties to include that.
That's what we've heard from
MER,
what our Ministry of
Indigenous Relations.
Right. Right. I think, I think it's nice that this comes as a recommendation of a committee, but I think it hasn't been thought out very well, especially as it's to do with the number of people that are going to be sitting at the table and also how the process works, I think we do need to give more thought to that rather than just saying, okay, let's send out letters and go. It's hard to step back a process unless you actually thought it through. And it doesn't sound thought through to me.
Thank you, Director Mawhinney, and then Director Lanyon. And then,
There's also Director Colburn.
There's Director Chapman actually first.
Oh, before me?
Oh, you go ahead. Go ahead, Director Mawhinney.
Oh, okay. Well, I was at the First Nations Relations Committee where this was discussed, and my understanding through those conversations was that an invitation has been previously sent to all of the nations that the SRD's administrative boundaries falls within. And the conversation was more about the fact that an invitation had not been sent recently, and perhaps it would be beneficial and show a sign of interest in conversation if we sent a second letter.
Okay, we're going to go Director Chapman, then Director Lanyon, then Director Colburn.
Thank you, Chair. This assumes that every First Nation is going to get a treaty. And I know in some circumstances, First Nations have determined they're best not to have a treaty. So I'm against that part of it, saying it has to be, they have to be in treaty negotiations. Sorry? What did you say?
We're on Part B, which hasn't anything to do with about treaty negotiations.
I'm jumping ahead. Okay. I'll wait until that portion.
Director Lanyon.
I need more time to think about this one. I'm not ready to vote yes until I understand it better.
Okay, Director Yates, pardon me. Mr. Yates?
Public Servant Yates. Just to set the record straight, I don't believe this regional district has formally invited First Nations in general to participate in our board members as non-voting members. It may have been discussed in the past, but I don't believe there has been official invitations that have gone out on that basis.
Okay, Director Colburn?
Hello, all. So this is coming out of the First Nations Relations Committee and also has to do with our reconciliation framework. It was first an engagement framework, was the language used, and we have since changed that. I think what this provides is an actual opening of a door. And I don't think that it has been really formally given. I think that there's always been a desire for input from and to nations. I will agree with Director Chapman that so I know that he was speaking about B, but it's along the same lines. There are nations who are not going to be in a treaty process. They're choosing not to do that. So then what is their mechanism for giving us information, for us sharing information with them? So all this is an opportunity to participate in the discussion piece as non-voting members and have valuable info directly given to us and vice versa that will affect some of our decisions. We live on other people's territory, and the decisions we make may affect those territories. Also, I think it's a really it's a goodwill and reconciliatory step to just put it out there that we are open for discussion. We are taking the UNDRIP, we are taking the act seriously, and we're trying to move forward in a good way.
Pardon me? Okay, Director Chapman.
Chair Baker, I'd move that this be referred so we can have more time to consider it and be able to give it more thought.
You want to defer it to First Nations, or are you just deferring it?
I think just deferring it to the board, yeah. Yeah.
For what length of time?
Just a month.
Just a month?
Yeah.
Okay, so bring it back to the next board meeting.
Please.
Okay, just Director Kerr.
Thank you, Chair. On City Council, on an issue like this, we're not in camera at this point. And I think it would be appropriate, I mean, that's certainly one of the provisions for going in camera on a discussion with First Nations relations. And I think it'd be appropriate that when we bring it back, it should be in camera.
Okay, so on the February 24th, 28th? February 28th meeting, we'll bring it into in camera. Okay? You call the question.
All in favor?
Sounded just like me. Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. I'm sorry? Director Colburn?
Sorry about that. It's hard to get in there when I tried to. So this is the question's already been called, but what I was asking is if the part. So that was on receipt, so the entire thing will come back. And the only reason that I'm concerned about that is because there's a kind of a deadline for an ABICC resolution. So that was my concern. If the whole thing is deferred to next month, then we missed that window for ABICC. All I was going to say is just a reminder.
This is what you're talking about. I think the board has said we want to discuss this more.
Yeah.
It's all good. The question's been called, so that's not, it is
Yeah.
what it is. But I just wanted to put that reminder out there.
Okay, and then that's including C is going to be deferred to an in-camera, correct? Okay, let's take some time since we're early and let's discuss how you feel. Gerald, how you feeling?
Doug wants to tell how he's feeling.
Doug wants to go first?
I'm not willing to share with you how I'm feeling, but I'm willing to share my thoughts.
Share them with me.
Well, if we miss an opportunity to get a resolution to AVICC, since this is more of a provincial issue globally, we could take it directly to UBCM if we miss the AVICC deadline. So I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about getting this right. That, as Director Wally said, and I know firsthand that Muchlet, Moochlet First Nations have already determined that it's best in their best interest not to have a treaty. They have more control of what goes on their lands right now. So I would expect they would not have a treaty. But I think we need to examine, as Director Kerr said, of how to structure this whole thing. Because in my dealings with First Nations, they're busy. They're understaffed, just like everyone else, and they are busy. They may not have time to come here and sit twice a month for meetings. But if we could, have a methodology of how we consult with them, what's important, and then have maybe a subcommittee to help us deal, talk to them and deal with the issues that are important so we can get this right and not foul up and trip over ourselves. I mean, I'd rather take the time to give this more thought and do it right. Thank you.
Agreed. Okay, now Director Wally's going to speak.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with Director Chapman. I just want to point out that what Director Colburn's referring to is Part C, which attempts to give voting rights to non-treaty members, and I'm very much opposed to that. So that's a totally different issue that we didn't even discuss. So I think the deferral is certainly the right motion.
Okay, Director Kerr? No? Sorry, your microphone's on. I thought you wanted to speak to me again. Okay, closed session. Nope.
Director Jack also wants to speak.
I'm sorry, Director Jack, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you guys for recognizing non-treaty and treaty. It is a fact, not all nations are pursuing treaty, and in all fairness, where we are at as Cayuga checklist and the services we utilize and things like that, roads, hospitals and things like that is where our concerns come in. Housing and things like that, electricity, and that's always been our fight. So the common grounds, that the SRD face, and helping people and helping other communities is where we felt it was best for us as a treaty nation, and sitting back as a non-voting member for all those years and watching the process that the SRD goes through and trying to determine if that was right for us. So we took our time and recognizing that and looking at the programs that the SRD provides and supports. And so that brings us to where we are today, and that's Cayuga checklist it. I can't speak on behalf of any other nations, but Cayuga checklist it only, because we are a treaty nation. I've been a part of this process since I was 18, and our remoteness and our needs differ from our neighbors that are just down the road, Stavalle, Arihatis, and all that. Our needs are a little different, and the way their operation is slightly different from ours. Their needs are slightly different. So as Cayuga checklist it, we looked at our needs and for the community, and that we compared those with what the SRD provides and things like that. And so as a treaty nation, it was right for us to work alongside the SRD, with the SRD in all aspects. And the decision, the thing from for other nations joining, like I said, I can't speak on behalf of any other nations that are in the process of treaty and where they want to go. But I think they should have a choice to make themselves if they do want to join. That should be up to them. I mean, the services the SRD provide are great. They meet the needs of what the people are asking for, or at least try to meet the needs. And so just from KCFM's aspects, that's where we are, and then that it took us the 10-year process to determine if we wanted to be a part of the SRD, and with all the common grounds, in all areas, transportation, medical, the hospitals, everything like that. We utilize a lot of those services, so that's why we joined the SRD, is to better build that relationship and those services. That's all that comes to my mind right now. So just speaking, as a treaty nation and our decision to become part of the SRD was because of all the work that you guys do and the work you guys provide. It meets our needs and it meets our common concerns for people within our area. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
That was easy.
Move to terminate. So moved. Vote. Call the question. All in favor? Thank you very much. We'll see you next month.
Committee as a whole.
No, I mean, for community of the whole, I won't be here, so we'll see you all next month. Thank you, sir.
Is it 3:30, Tom, or
3:30.
3:30?
3:30 is your